Hello, YouTube. Nice to see you here again. We are, you're about to record episode, what is it, 49 of Connection Over Coffee. So we're going to have a chat about what I learned, three things that I learned growing my body hair. I have to say this is a pretty odd topic for me to talk about, but we'll cover some really interesting things that I know will serve you. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. Let's get into it. All right. Yuma and welcome. I'm Phil McAuliffe. I'm the Loneliness Guy, and this is Connection Over Coffee. This is a podcast that proudly serves and supports you, a gay man experiencing loneliness, and helps you take steps to getting the authentic connection you need and deserve. Thank you so much for joining me. Please go and make yourself comfortable, and I'll go get us some coffees. Okay, so that is now where, if you were listening on the podcast, you would hear the sound of the coffee maker going. I could make that kind of beatbox style, but that would just embarrass us both. So I hope you've got yourself a coffee, and I have one here, but it's kind of getting to empty, which is a bit disappointing. Yeah, I don't know. I might sort of go to town on the dregs in a moment. Anyway, really glad that you're here. Let's get into it. Here you go. Welcome to episode 49 of Connection Over Coffee. In this episode, we're going to have a chat about the three things that I learned about my relationship and connection to my physical self, to my body, after letting my body hair grow over this past Australian winter. In this episode, we'll touch on issues around body image and connection to self and connection to those most important to you and to us, you and me, and to community. But before we get into this episode any further, this podcast is proudly recorded, edited, and uploaded in Canberra, Australia's capital city, on the traditional country of the Ngunnawal people. And I humbly acknowledge and pay my respects to Ngunnawal elders past, present, and emerging. I also want to remind you that you're amazing. You don't seek out and then listen to podcasts or watch videos on YouTube about loneliness unless you've come to the realization that you're lonely. And that realization can be very uncomfortable, right? The stigma and shame you're possibly feeling or have felt is real, and it takes a lot of courage to even engage with the subject. So if you're coming back for another coffee and a chat with me, or this is your first time, I'm proud of you and I'm grateful for you, or grateful to you for joining me. And I want to let you know really quickly about what I do here at The Loneliness Guy. If you look up the cure to loneliness in your preferred search engine, you'll likely get this advice. Connection is the antidote to loneliness. And it's true. Connection is the antidote to loneliness. It's simple and elegant advice. But if you've ever tried to really do connection, you'll know that doing connection is tough when you're experiencing loneliness. And unless you're getting the connection that you need, you're still going to feel lonely if you just go about trying to do any old type of connection. Because if you don't know the type of connection that you need and why you need it, you're likely to not feel connected after a while. You'll feel that you're back where you are at the sort of when you realize that you are lonely, and you're likely to be back at square one and feel really exhausted. And that's where I come in. Beyond my blog and podcast, which help you learn more about loneliness more generally and to destigmatize loneliness for you and the world, I'm here to help you when you're ready to learn from your loneliness. And your loneliness is your own unique blend of ingredients. I'm here to guide you through your loneliness and to help you learn what it's trying to tell you through my Connection Starter course. The details of how you can get my guidance, wisdom, and insight in your life are all on my website, thelonelinessguy.com. And there's a link in the episode description. And please know that I'm right here for you. And this is a special message to the lonely part of you who is questioning your worthiness of help, that you are worthy of receiving help. You are worthy of asking for help, and you are worthy of receiving help. And while the Loneliness Guy has been around for over 2 years, I'm still working, and I'm working really hard to get the whole thing off the ground. My work at the moment is largely audience supported. So if you get value from this episode and want to help me continue this work and to reach more gay men, please show your appreciation through a kind review on the service through which you're listening on this episode, and by tapping the Buy Me a Coffee link in the episode description. I want to say thank you in advance for your generosity. Now, on to this episode. On Thursday, the 13th of October, 2022, I published 3 things I learned growing my body hair. Now, I could have said like 17 things or 2 things or whatever, but apparently I'm learning that things like blog posts or articles, you probably know this already, blog posts or articles that have, 5 things that make you something or whatever, clickbait. it's essentially clickbait. So I thought, right, what could I learn from this? And I'll admit, this is, an attempt to go, wow, who's got time to sit through the 10 things? Who's like, the one big thing is probably, not deep enough. 3 things seems pretty good. So there we were. 3 things I learned about growing my body hair. And I want to have a chat to you about some of the issues I shared in that blog. Like you, and so many gay men, I have a complicated and have had a very complicated relationship with my body. And there's a couple of things there that I wanted to explore with you on this. And for many years, I shared this in the blog post, but I wanted to dig a little bit deeper over coffee with you. Like many of you, I have a love-hate relationship with my body. And on the sum of things, for a very long time, it was more on the hate, my body. And I tried to do all sorts of things to my body to essentially hate it into submission. I had a very strong belief that I wasn't essentially like fit enough, strong enough, buff enough, whatever it was, like tanned enough. I'm sort of naturally very white. And, it wasn't sort of all the things enough of, the type of man that I found attractive. And I wasn't anywhere near that kind of sort of that standard of body. And it was really weird. And this might resonate with you. And I'd love to hear if it does. I knew rationally that the images that I was seeing on the cover of men's magazines like Men's Health and Men's Fitness were altered. They were photoshopped. They were, the result, the bodies that I was seeing, the models that I was seeing were the result of the men doing all sorts of really dangerous things to their body and being augmented by the editor's, ability with Photoshop. I knew that, but in my heart, I really felt that I was lacking. My body was not good enough to really to for me to accept myself. My body was not enough for me to accept myself. It wasn't so much about the external praise. It wasn't so much about what my body could do. It was how it felt for me to be me in my body, and what I thought that my body was letting me down. And I'm going to just leave that there with you, because I feel that that might actually really be something that you also have experienced or are experiencing. And I noticed probably in the early 2000s, so about 20 years ago, I lived in Venezuela. And in Venezuela, there are a great number of very, very attractive men. And those men are generally hairless. Those men generally have the most amazing cafe con leche skin. And there I was in Venezuela, going to a gym and, you know, seeing these amazing, very, very, very handsome, very buff men. Like the gym that I was a member of was the official gym of Mr. and Miss Venezuela. So there was lots of plastic surgery happening in that gym. But also it was, you know, it was not a healthy place if one had any kind of negative perception of themselves and their body. And for me, I was looking, you know, I would look at myself in the mirror, and there I was, a pasty white, you know, Anglo-Australian, and, you know, with two left feet, and you know, there were these, you know, beautiful men, these Venezuelan men who, you know, just looked awesome in skimpy swimwear, tanned beautifully, were buff, and all this kind of, and like couldn't use their bodies and move their bodies, and just seemed to have like this beautiful connection with their body. They were sexy and sensual and all of that, and I was comparing myself to that. One of the things that I began to notice was that like what I was seeing around me and finding attractive, and seeing on the covers of these magazines that I was subscribing to, the models were hairless. And I would look down at, you know, my chest and my abs and my arms, and like my whole body, and just be like, oh, right. And so I thought, right, what would I look like if I shaved? What would it look like? Well, how would it feel? And I did. I started shaving over sort of time. I started with my chest and chest and abs. And then I realized that, you know, I was well, I hadn't just realized, but for the longest time, this is until, you know, I was in my mid-20s at this point, that I knew for a very long time, ever since like puberty, that I sweated a lot under my armpits. And bear with me, like you might be just going, oh, too much information, but you're here now and we're here now and I'm talking about it. But I sweated so much, and it was like anxious sweating. And I know now, in retrospect, that I was so consumed by what other people thought of me that I thought that, you know, how I looked, how I spoke, how I acted was all kind of some kind of fraud. And it was this persistent level of anxiety that you know, only seemed to manifest in the profuse underarm sweating. And I saw something I read an article in Men's Health or Men's Fitness, and it was all about how, like, you know, one could control their sweating. their underarm sweating. And one of the suggestions was to actually remove the hair from your armpit. And that would then allow the antiperspirant to stay on the skin rather than on the hair and then sort of sweat right off. So I did that and it worked. It worked. Or at least, reduced dramatically the amount of underarm, like armpit sweating. And so I did that. And then I started swimming competitively in Venezuela, and like picked it back up after doing it at university. And so I started like trimming the arm hair and then the leg hair. And so I essentially started to, just sort of over time, remove all my body hair. And then I would trim the pubes, and, because, I'd be wearing Speedos a lot. And, it would make sure that, everything was sort of kept nice and tidy. There wasn't sort of excessive bush showing. But I maintained that for years, mainly because I liked the look. It gave me a boost of confidence. And I also, and I shared this in the blog, I also didn't want to go through the whole regrowth stage. And so I started shaving my body hair sort of in this like routine, this weekly routine of Mondays and Fridays, I think like Tuesdays and Fridays, perhaps it was like upper body. And then the day after that was the legs. And that sort of went on for years and years and years and years. And I did it because there was the aesthetic reason and then sort of like how I felt, but also, I hated the thought that, my then wife or my kids or someone would like brush my arm and it would be like brushing Velcro. So I maintained that kind of really, I was going to say excessive routine, but it wasn't so much like, I don't want to say excessive. I don't want to judge myself there. I want to give myself some grace. But it was a thorough routine. And then when I came out and, my then wife and I decided that we were going to separate, I started seeing men. And one of the things that I noticed, this is, we're adults here. We're adults here. I'm going to say that, if you're squeamish now, you wouldn't have pressed play. So I'm going to presume that you're an adult and you can take this kind of conversation as kind of the frank and open and honest conversation that we know we need to do to move beyond our loneliness. So I'm going to lead the way here. But I realized that, a number of the men that I was seeing naked had shaved their balls and shaved their holes. And so I thought, oh, that's actually kind of nice. So I started doing that too. And so it was, I had sort of added that to the repertoire of shaving as well. And I realized that, it's a lot more comfortable to, a lot more comfortable for me to have sex without hair around the hole. I'll leave that there with you, but, it's something that is really just, it's a fact. It's a fact. And then I realized that one of the things that I really, hold on, let me start that again. When I realized that I was lonely, close to my 40th birthday, and And I went and got help from Mike Campbell, my friend, coach, and mentor, who's been a guest here on Connection Over Coffee a couple of times, and another coach with whom I've partnered to support you. As part of his program, I did an exercise, which I'm going to share with you now. And it involved testing or assessing, not testing, but assessing the quality, the nature of the relationship with my physical body. And there were two parts to it. And I get people to do this as part of the Connection Starter course, as part of the Connection to Self. So here's just a little taste of what the Connection Starter course that I offer through my mentoring services, which you can see through the help link in the episode description. The first part is to sit essentially in front of like a shaving mirror, and without glasses, if you wear glasses or anything like that, sit and look, set a timer, sit and look at your face for 5 minutes and write down what you see. And what you notice, what the kind of internal conversation is, what your thoughts are, what they're saying, what you notice. And after that's done, then you go to a full-length mirror and strip off, so you're completely naked, and maybe glasses if you need glasses to see yourself. But no watch, no other adornment, if it can be easily removed. And then set the timer again for 5 minutes. And then look at yourself. Look at yourself. And go through that whole exercise of assessing, paying attention, writing it down, getting it out of your head. This is the really important thing. Writing down what you see, what you notice, what the words that you're using, what your thoughts are. And then after 5 minutes, you then go about your day. Put your clothes on, don't put your clothes on, it's all the same to me. But then, as part of the next conversation, we then go through what you noticed. And it's a really powerful way of of telling me how connected you are to yourself, your physical self. And for me, one of the things that I realized, I don't want to share too much because I don't want my insights to share to cloud how you go through this. If you were to do the exercise. But for me, it was I had a very powerful sense of awe. So that's AWE. This, my body, is the only vessel that gets me through life. And I had spent so much time hating my body, hating how it looked, hating how it was shaped into submission. There was, I would, spend so much time at the gym. I would, eat religiously every 3 hours, big meals, and take all the shakes and supplements, whatever was being told to me in those fitness magazines as the next big thing. And I noticed that those next big things in those fitness magazines were actually like cyclical. Like 2 years earlier, they said that completely the opposite was true. And now, it needed to be doing the opposite of their advice from 2 years ago in order to get bigger and stronger and turn all the heads. And that was a really powerful shift for me. And I decided then that I would stop hating my body and love it. Love it for what it is and work with it, as opposed to trying to punish it for what it could never, ever be. And that was a really profound moment for me in that relationship to my physical self. And so earlier this year, I wrote a blog post and had another chat with Mike about body image for gay men. And it was about May, June that came out. And as a part of that, I was like, oh, right, this is, how am I going to be doing, this? Like, that's a terrible way of explaining it. There's lots going on in my mind before my mouth can catch up, which is awesome for recording a podcast. Essentially, what happened with the cogs in my mind began to whir. I'm like I love myself. I love my body. I love how it is my vessel for getting me through life, and the only one. And I love how I care for it. I love how it responds to that care. I, have a fantastic relationship now, but gee, I'm still shaving my body hair. Or I'd stopped by this stage. There was sort of a bit of a timing, but I'm like, I'm going to actually test how I relate to my hairy self, to my hirsute self. And I did that. I had that realization as I was writing that blog post. And so I said to Jeff, this is what I'm going to do. And he was like, yay, okay, let's, I'm, interested to see how this goes. And so I started doing a weekly sort of, I mentioned it to you if you follow me on Instagram. I started saying this to you in May and started doing every Thursday a weekly update where I would take a picture of myself or do a video and say, this is week 2 or week 3 or whatever. And the challenge for me, or the experiment for me, was a connection to self experiment where I would grow my body hair until the 1st of October. Until the 1st of October, 2022. And over time, the hair grew back, quite obviously. And there's a couple of things that I noticed when the hair started to grow back. The first one was that the regrowth for the first few weeks was awful, especially on the chest and the legs. It was itchy and my clothes stuck to me like Velcro. And then in about June, I went for a swim and I was swimming, and for the first time in years, I could actually feel my hair as I swam. And swimming with body hair felt very strange. And it was a sort of acute. I was really aware of how felt like each individual strand of hair on my arms, on my torso, and on my legs was moving through the water. It was like hypersensitive. And in the blog post, I posted a link to a video on YouTube for an ad for the Hyundai Kona, where there's what are they, like the rollers of at a car wash sort of come to life and wash / dance around a new Kona. And they're kind of, the brushes of a car wash, like they're like got long strands on them. And so, kind of very fluid and stuff. And I just felt like one of those car wash rollers there with all of the hair kind of seemingly flowing in the water. And I also run. I run as part of my physical fitness, and running with leg hair also felt similarly weird. Very used to running without having leg hair, but running with leg hair felt like I just felt every breeze on there, and again, hypersensitive. oddly, like, I don't know what I was expecting, but by July, so a few months in, I couldn't see my nipples under my hair. And that was just a bit odd. Like, you know, from my perspective, looking down, I couldn't see my nipples. And I missed seeing them. Unsurprisingly, and if you know what I look like, you'll see that, you know, I have a very grey beard. I have grey hair on my head. And I was surprised because it had been such a very long time since I'd seen my body hair, how much grey there was. And I was surprised to see the grey hair on my shoulders. And I remember looking at those going, oh God, they're like the shoulders of an old man. And I that was confronting that. But curiously, I then noticed that, you know, sort of beyond the bottom of my pecs, there was not much grey hair. So it seems to be sort of moving south from the top of my head and you know, everything else down from sort of the top of my abs down is still sort of the dark brown. I also noticed on my abs that there would be like sort of isolated patches of hair, sort of like islands of hair. Also noticed that not shaving, going through that sort of intense shaving routine, that weekly shaving routine of twice weekly, saved me so much time. Saved me so much time. And actually, you know, not sort of contributing to, you know, preserving the environment also meant that I wasn't using any disposable razors, and you know, wasn't using shaving cream. This is interesting, this next one. It goes back to that point about the excessive sweating under my armpits. And that's generally a real shame response for me. And, you know, from that whole low-level constant anxiety that I was experiencing ever since puberty. And I was really interested to kind of see how my body hair, like my underarm hair, would how I would go with that. Would I like start sweating profusely and embarrassingly again? I didn't. And I feel that the circumstances within me that caused me to have that constant low-level anxiety that manifested in really profuse armpit sweating. It's a lovely expression to say, and one that I'd never thought that I'd say on a podcast, but profuse armpit sweating, it's gone. I'm living life as me. And the only time I really sweated under the arms was when I was really stressed, like making a presentation and speaking in front of a lot of people, or was exercising. And I've sort of really, that's been a very interesting experience. And so, you know, on the armpit hair, and I wonder if like this is kind of fetish, but, you know, doing pull-ups or chin-ups or lat pull-downs at the gym, and, you know, so, you know, seeing my arms sort of above my head, and, you know, I would see my armpits and I would like constantly be surprised by seeing, you know, the hair there. It would always be just a bit of a surprise. And honestly, I was enjoying getting to see what I look like. So here's what I learned. I felt physically connected to myself. And remember, this is one of the, like the whole experiment was to determine how I felt to my physical self, how connected I felt to my physical self. And I feel physically connected to myself. I don't look at my body. I didn't look at my body when it was hairy and go, ugh, maybe except the shoulders. But I still could see my body as my only vessel for getting me through life. And I still remained in awe of it and just grateful for how it keeps me alive and moving through life. For that, though, I did notice, this is the second thing that I learned, was that sometimes it felt that my hair was like an article of clothing that was between me and the world. And that was uncomfortable. I don't want to live life with filters anymore. I don't want to live life with masks. And rationally, I know that me having body hair is like actually me in the world, and presenting with that to the world or as part of the world is like me. It's me, it's part of me. But I guess after having not had or maintaining or suppressing my body hair for 20 years, like having body hair felt like I was wearing an article of clothing, and I didn't want to have another filter in the world. I'm tired of having filters in the world and, you know, trying to connect with the world, with myself through these filters. I thought that was an interesting observation for me. And the third one was, while I consciously posted updates weekly to Instagram, I was surprised by the amount of feedback that I received. And it's clear that body hair is something that's divisive as a point of physical attraction in the gay communities. And I found myself beginning to put currency on the comments that I received about my body. And the comments were, you know, the audience here at the Loneliness Guy is awesome. And so the comments were almost universally lovely and supportive and encouraging, but I found it interesting that I was beginning to see myself and change the perceptions of my own beauty on the way that others saw me, the way that you saw me, rather than how I felt within myself. And when I realized that, and this was maybe about sort of 5-6 weeks in, I was very careful to deliberately or accidentally crowdsource opinions about whether I should keep the body hair or not. So you have your thoughts on body hair. I have my thoughts, but your thoughts can't, and I won't let your thoughts determine my relationship to my body. So that's a question for you. Can you allow your relationship to your body to dictate how you, or determine, not dictate, to determine how you perceive your body? Can that be the primary source of how you perceive your body? Whether it's hairy, hairless, whether it's, you know, tall, short, skinny, fat, whatever it is, you know, black, white, whatever. You know, whatever the color of your skin, the shape of your body, like what's on your skin, can you and your perceptions and your relationship, your graceful relationship with your own physical self, can that be the determining factor? Because for me, I'm really happy to say, and I guess this is the product of a fuck ton of work that I've done within myself to help me, after paying attention to my loneliness, going through all of this, the relationship that I have to myself, the relationship that I have with those most important to me, and the relationship that I have with my communities, that I have that sort of almost reflexive response to other people's perceptions of my body. And me going, thank you, that's lovely. I'm glad that you see that. I'm glad that you seem to enjoy that. However, I'm putting greatest currency on how I feel being me in my body. Can you do that too? Are you at that point yet? Or does that point, seem like such a distant speck on the horizon to almost seem impossible? Because if it's anything but like a reality for you, there's some work there for you to do. And so now it's October, and I did shave my chest, abs, and arms on the 1st of October, Saturday, the 1st of October. And in the blog post, there's a photo of me, well, not of me, but of the floor in our bathroom. And it looks like there's an animal on the floor. I have to say it was oddly satisfying to run the clippers up the length of my arms. And it felt like, just how as satisfying as like a shearer shearing a sheep. And again, the following Saturday, I shaved my chest, abs, and arms again, and also pubes in there too. But also I've noticed that I'm not inclined to take up that whole twice weekly rigorous regime that I used to have for a very long time, for almost 20 years. And I'm really happy that I still have admiration for my body, for what it does and how it gets me into the world and experiencing the world as a 45-year-old man. I still love how it allows me to move, how, what it can still allow me to do. And I have to say that, there's a continual work on with the aesthetics of my body, seeing on social media, seeing men in real life. Like you, I compare myself. I'm like, oh God, maybe if this, maybe if that, maybe if my, I don't know, calves were bigger, or, my arms were this, or my chest was this, or my ass was this. Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do. And I guess, in the conversation that I have with Mike on body image, one of the things, when we're gay, we admire people who have pretty much exactly the same body parts as us. And it's the small differences that we can get fixated on. And I'm like that too. I'm like that too. And so I see something on social media and I'm, suck my gutty. I go to, tense the abs. And then I notice that and I'm like, that's interesting. So it's continual work on for me because, in admiring someone who, genetically or whatever it is, apart from some differences, looks pretty much exactly like me, has all the same bits in the same spots that I do. It's the differences that then I use to compare against myself, and I catch myself. And I wonder if you catch yourself too. And when you do catch yourself, what do you do? Do you berate yourself and suck the gut in and it's like, oh God, I've got to do another 20 crunches? Or, before I can take my shirt off, I need to do 50 push-ups. Or can you go, yep, he's got a fine body. I do too. My body sustains my life. So I'm curious to know about that with you. How is your relationship with your body? Body hair or not? You may have not have done a body hair experiment like mine, but you may have sort of done some other work. And it's really important because it goes to that connection to self, the first pillar of connection, the connection to your physical self. So I'm really curious to know what you've done, if you've done anything, or what your relationship with your body is. your physical self, what's it like? Do you love it? Or perhaps, do you loathe it? Do you still go to punish yourself for how you look? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and let me know if you feel that I can support you, because I know how hard it is. I really do know how hard it is to get yourself beyond the hatred of your body and lamenting how it doesn't look a certain way, and really working so hard to have it make it look a certain way, and knowing or hoping that punishing yourself will turn your body into something that it's not at that point. That's it for this episode. It's a bit longer than I expected, so thank you so much for hanging around for this coffee. And remember, I'm here to support you through your loneliness and to help you get the soul-nourishing connection, that feeling of being loved and belonging that you're wanting and have been searching for. And all of this is through thelonelinessguy.com. Check the link in the show notes to see my services and the services of the coaches I partner with. My friend, you can stop choosing to sit in the comfortable misery of your loneliness. You can choose growth. You can choose growth over the comfort of not doing anything. And I'm right here for you when you choose growth. And the show notes also have links to how you can join the free mailing list. You'll not miss any content, and you'll receive news about what's happening around the Loneliness Guy, including invitations to join monthly Zoom calls on a topic that we've covered this month. All of that for you on the mailing list. Indeed, the topic for the Zoom call this month is going to be on body image. So join the mailing list and you will receive an invitation to that on the last weekend of October. And if you've got something from this episode, why not buy me a coffee to say thanks? There's a PayPal link in the episode description, and money received through PayPal goes into me continuing this work. And your generosity and kindness is always appreciated. Thank you so much in advance. And if you've got any questions for me or feedback, reach out to me on socials or send me an email to connect@thelonelinessguy.com. And this is social media. Remember to like, comment, rate, and share this episode. It helps me out enormously and helps others in your social circle who may be quietly experiencing loneliness to know that they're not alone and that you are a safe space to talk about loneliness and how that can make us all feel. I really do appreciate you joining me for coffee today, Yara. And until next time, take care of yourself, and together we'll get you through your loneliness and help you get the soul-nourishing connection you need and deserve. Until next time, bye. Thank you, YouTube. Have a wonderful day. If you've got any comments, put it in the comments below. That's what comments are for. And but yeah, if you've got any questions for me, yell out. I'm right here for you. All right. Have a great day. I'll see you later.